Thank you again for coming out to the second in our two-night series devoted to the feature films directed by world-renowned visual artist Shirin Neshat and her co-director Shoja Azari. Tonight, we're thrilled to be presenting the Los Angeles theatrical premiere of their latest film, Land of Dreams. We're especially honored to have Shirin Neshat here with us in person. We are also honored to have so many of her collaborators on the film with us as well, including co-director and screenwriter Shoja Azari, composer Michael Brook, and stars Robin Bartlett and Christopher McDonald. All of them will be joining me on stage for a post-screening conversation, so please stick around for that. Now, I'd like to ask a true friend of the archive to come up and help us welcome Shirin Neshat back to the Billy Wilder Theater. A member of the Archive Board of Advisors, Mark Amin is the CEO of Sabini Films, through which he has produced a diverse slate of features, including The Prince and Me, Peaceful Warrior, and his directorial debut, Emperor, which was nominated for 2 NAACP Image Awards, including Outstanding Independent Motion Picture. Among his many other credits are Eve's Bayou and Frida, which was nominated for 5 Oscars and won 2. He holds a BA degree in economics from the University of Kansas and an MBA from UCLA, and he is an executive producer on Land of Dreams. There's so much here we do at the Wilder that we could not do with Mark, so please help me welcome him to the stage right now.
Hi, everyone. First, thank you for coming to see this fantastic movie. I've known Shirin for a long time. When she asked me to get involved with this film as executive producer, it was really an honor, and it was a fantastic trip, culminating with the premiere of movie at Venice Film Festival, it was really well received, fantastically received, as well as all the fun at the Venice Film Festival. I want to thank Paul for such a great introduction. I don't know if I deserve all that, but was really appreciate Archives. And Archives has been really an amazing supporter of the Iranian cinema for the past 20 or 30 years. I lost count. Anyway, I just want Shirin to come up here, introduce the movie, and then we can start the movie.
Good evening. So many of you are here tonight. I just happy that you choose to spend the evening with us. I can't start without thanking Paul Malcolm from UCLA and Alireza Ardakani, Mr. Razi from Farhang Foundation to have the screenings of my work organized. Also, the Hammer Museum is obviously one of my favorite museums in the world. Shoja Azari, who's the co-director and co-writer of the film, is here and he will be joining me. Thank you, Shoja. I just have to say that it gives me the chills that we're here tonight in Los Angeles, the largest population of Iranians living outside of Iran, on the eve of a major protest and during this incredible, extraordinary uprising happening in Iran, when our women are busy making the first female revolution in the world. And I think, like all of you Iranians in this room, our life has changed in the last 2 weeks, ever since the murder of Mahsa Amini. It's really difficult to focus on anything else. And so our work and career have taken a back seat to support all those young people, men and women, who are risking their lives. So all of us will see a more better future and experience freedom and democracy finally. So we owe that to them. And it's been too long that all of us, so many of us, I would say, have lived in the state of fear, whether we live inside or outside of Iran. And we have been so divided so deeply divided. And the idea that dream of finally this country will be reunited and that finally we won't be afraid and we will be able to go home. It's a dream that I think everyone lives inside of every one of us. And I'm there tomorrow with you in the protest, and so is Shoja, and I just want to say we're in total solidarity with our young people in Iran. Talking about dreams, this film, it's all about dreams and nightmares, and it's not just about America. It is about dreams of us as Iranian immigrants in the US that are so conflicted between sometimes very difficult past, very turbulent and violent past, and yet living in a present time in a country that we don't quite connect to. But through dreams, and through the journey of this woman collecting dreams, we find that dreams cross all borders, and that's the beauty of it. This film, it's very surrealistic, so I don't want you to expect a very realistic film, as I'm a visual artist, and the film will go in between dream and reality, so there is no expectation of believability. The film is basically following the journey of a young Iranian woman living in the US. And I think it echoes my own experience as I landed in Los Angeles at the age of 17 on my own and felt somehow lost and found in this country. The film script was co-written with Shoja Azari and Jean-Claude Carrier, the wonderful, legendary scriptwriter who unfortunately passed away before this film was finished. The film was shot in New Mexico because to many of us Iranians, the state of New Mexico, the desert landscape, so nostalgically resembled Iran. So we decided, as mostly Iranian team, to shoot in Iran. In Iran, I would say, as if slip, New Mexico. I'm a little nervous, as you can imagine. But I'm also really happy that some of our LA-based artists and collaborators are here. Christopher McDonald, Robin Bartlett, I think, is in the house. Negar Ali Klein, where our issues are costume designer Rebecca Comerford. We have, of course, Mark Amin, that executive produced this film, and Sol Tryon, that is our producer, who the film would not have been possible without him. Also, Michael Brook, the composer of the film, will join us. There's numerous people in this house, in this room, between the field of art world to art community, that I won't name you one by one. You create the community I belong to. And thank you for honoring me with your presence. And I sincerely hope you enjoy the film. And if you don't, forgive me. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us here. It's an honor to have so many amazing people on stage with us here tonight. I feel like there's so many different ways that we can enter into this film, this amazing film that you've made. But I wanted to sort of start by just noting that this Land of Dreams that we saw tonight is not just this film. It was an exhibition that opened in 2021 at the Gladstone Gallery that involved 2 video pieces that Sheila Vand also starred in, but also about over 100 portraits of people you had interviewed in New Mexico about their dreams that you incorporated into this exhibit. So I wanted to start with this question: when does the full form of a project like this come to you? At the beginning? Does it emerge over time? And when do you decide, I need to take this into a different medium, I need to take this into a different direction? How does the piece become the whole?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for watching this film, and thank you guys for joining me and Shoja. I'm a visual artist, mainly a photographer and video artist, but I'm really interested in cinema and storytelling. But the idea of Land of Dreams was to create a kind of a portrait of America, a portrait of a nation from the perspective of an Iranian immigrant. So I went to New Mexico and photographed about 200 people from different ethnic backgrounds, from Native Americans to Hispanic to lots of lower income to, many different cities. And my interest was to really ultimately create a room, a tapestry of images of Americans, faces that represented the kind of diversity that is the identity of this country. So we chose New Mexico as a place that is the poorest state in America, but is also one of the most diverse states in America in terms of its constituents. And so really the Land of Dreams for me was a portrait of America in 3 different forms, in 3 different languages, but all from the perspective of an Iranian immigrant. And so for me, it was the first time ever to do a project that collapses in 3 very different mediums. So today we have a double channel projection that is about 20 minutes long with Sheila Rand, and then this film and the photographs.
I know that collaboration has always been a big part of your practice. You have a group of collaborators and partners you work with for many, many years, including Shoja, and your cinematographer tonight, Qasim Ibrahimian. Can you talk? This round of applause for him.
Awesome tonight.
Can you? I'm going to throw it to both of you, and then you can collaborate on the answer. How does this collaborative process work, Shoja and Shirin? How do you work together as co-directors on a film like this?
We don't. It's very difficult. She puts you through a lot of torture. But it's fun too. I mean, I'm a masochist in nature, so I like it. But she comes with these crazy ideas, and then someone has to put sense into it, so that's what I do.
Okay, that's a good way of putting it. No comments.
Tell us what really happens now. Well, okay, so this is your first film of 3 feature films that turns towards America and really explores this country that you've lived in for many decades. And I have to say, you've in doing so, you've brought some really iconic American faces and cast to the screen, including 2 we have up tonight. So as new collaborators, Robin and Christopher, is part of Shirin's practice. Let's start with Robin. Robin, what drew you to this project, and what was your first sort of take on your role in it?
I was just fascinated by the script that I read, and did I do a taped audition for you? No, you saw something else. I forget. Yeah. And then I saw Women Without Men, and I said, well, I have to work with these people. Because there's also another fantastic film that they made. So when we got there, I understood what the scene was about, but I didn't really understand who my character was. And that, for some reason, on the day of shooting, I decided that she had early onset Alzheimer's, and that kind of gave me the way in.
So it's still a very powerful performance. I mean, it's really draws us right into that character. And I'm curious. I want to ask Christopher this too. So and Shirin, jump in if you'd like to. Shirin's work as a filmmaker straddles, in a way, defies the categories between the gallery, the art gallery, and the theater exhibition, and is what. I think Land of Dreams may do that even more sort of like defiantly in terms of like moving between these 2 kinds of spaces. What was your experience working with a visual artist like Shirin? Was it different than, say, a narrative filmmaker where she's there's narrative in the film, but it's really driven by concepts, one idea moving and flowing into the next?
Yeah, you're not really sure what to expect, because once you get the script and you read it, and you know that it has this kind of ethereal theme to it, and it's like she said in her speech earlier, that it has a lot that you have to suspend your belief in it. But that's the beautiful thing about doing this kind of independent artistic film. And I've done plenty of the other kind of, studio stuff, and it's, a little formulaic, if you will. And so to embrace this kind of beautiful, artistic, out there piece was an honor to be invited, and an honor to be asked to play a second part while we're out there. And this was during COVID, and nothing was going on really in our lives. And it was like I was sitting with my kids, and this call came through, and I had to read it, and I went, oh my God, yes. And I did my research as you did, and I thought, wow, what an invitation, and what beautiful people, and Rossellini met. I mean, it was just great people. And our leading lady, my God, did she kill it in this piece. I wish she was here now, because she is a delight as a person as she is on screen. I enjoyed the whole process. I enjoyed extremely beautiful location, and I mostly enjoyed the people. I mean, what a genius both of them are. As an actor, just to embrace that kind of artistic freedom, they were just pushing this idea, and to be on board was, like I said, an honor and a privilege, and I'm so glad I was part of this beautiful artistic masterpiece, I think.
It's really amazing how both of you, before we even know who your characters are, or before you even speak, I mean, the way you're framed in the art direction, you seem to belong in those spaces very strongly, and then these American archetypes that you're playing. I mean, and Christopher, you played two, the sort of sports dad, I would imagine, in one, and then the preacher on the other side, very closely connected, right? Did you see a continuum between those two characters when you were asked to come back? Very dreamlike in a way, like it's
very dreamlike. I tried to make it as I wanted people to guess, is that the same guy? So, but playing both of them was great, and they got the idea on the set to do it, virtually, which was just great. And working with Anna Gunn was terrific, and then to come in and to do the preacher, the Jesus. It's three syllables, just so you know, and it was just kind of fun to let it rip on that, and that was one of my favorite scenes in that whole movie. It was just so out there, so artistically crazy. We talked about it earlier about the flames being just right in this really spaced out house that we were in location, and the fact that it came off so interesting and so beautiful. So again, that's part of that journey you take, and you throw yourself and your heart and your soul into it, and that's what the joy of doing independent film is all about. So.
Michael, the very same question to you in terms of how did you come to this project, and what was your first take on it as a composer? The challenges it might have presented to you in terms of the Shirin's conceptual sort of structure. Because I can't imagine that final shot without your score. The final shot is beautiful, but the music carries us and sweeps us up with it in this really beautiful way. I mean, throughout the whole film, your score is amazing, but that is just such a powerful final sequence because of the music that's there.
Oh, thank you. And I forgot your question. Oh. I was so caught up in your praise.
Oh, that's okay. We'll just move on. No. When you first heard about the project, what attracted you to it, and what were the challenges that maybe you thought you would have to face in composing for a film like this?
I think the through line is the sort of the power of the vision, even though we might not be able to articulate it, which is kind of like dreams in some ways. I think that it was just, you can't explain it, but it affects you very strongly and draws you in, and maybe touches on some sort of, I don't know what the word is, but some subconscious thing or something that, I was just reading, someone said that you don't have to understand poetry for it to affect you. Mm-hmm. And it felt like there was this element of this immersive, powerful, not just an atmosphere, but a kind of a portrait of maybe of a country or a society or a group of individuals. Mm-hmm. And I think the the sort of difficult to articulate power of that completely drew me in, and it's something I certainly have a huge hunger for to be able to participate in things like that. They affect me very strongly.
Shirin, I want to come back to you. It almost seems too obvious to ask. Simin is a stand-in for you, or in a way, it's sort of an alter ego. So the question then becomes, how important or how significant are dreams in your artistic practice? Is it something do you record your dreams? Do you write them down like that?
Well, first of all, I wanted to say that this was perhaps my personal work ever, because it was really about my experience living in America and things that I understand and don't understand, and people that I like and things that I don't like, and so it really was the manifestation of that, and this sense of disjointment between the Iranian American culture. And I mean, I think even musically, I'm sorry, I'm diverting a little bit from your question, but we talked quite a lot with Michael, because for me, this film had to have a footing in Iran and a footing in America, a footing in this single person's journey as a human being, and the country of America. And this is something that I've always done in my work, because my work has always been a lot about my own emotional and lots of my own anxieties, but also it's never been just about me. It's been about much bigger pictures. And yes, I have been obsessed with dreams, and I've been very fascinated by how my dreams have tended to be a projection of my fears. Everything that I try not to think about during the day visit me in the evenings in my sleep. And a lot of my dreams have been about my mother, who lives in Iran, and almost as if she represents the motherland. And as she gets older, I have always this anxiety: if she passes, then my connection to Iran. And so I've had recurring dreams, and I've made them into videos where she becomes central to my work. So there's a lot of symbolism, there's a lot of allegory, there are things that you don't quite comprehend in your dreams. And then there's references to reality, but things that don't make sense. And I love all of that, the surrealism of dreams. And I've been great information for an artist, because again, we think of like poets, you know, and we as Iranians, we have a way of feeling comfortable with that kind of language that is, you know, that is abstraction, really, in the way that we use metaphors and allegory and symbolism to say what, So for me, dreams are an extension of poetry.
Yeah, this question of surrealism and its presence in your work, or in this film in particular, was really interesting to me, because I think we think of contemporary Iranian cinema, at least, as realist, very realist based, poetic realism, I think, for a certain period, but I think almost relentlessly realistic, you know, more recently. But I've seen recently maybe a younger generation of Iranian filmmakers working in a more surrealist vein. You have Jean-Claude Carrier, was your co-screenwriter, who, you know, wrote a number of important films for Louis Buñuel, one of our great 20th century filmmakers and surrealists. But you also referenced, I read an 11th century book in Iran called Creatures of Wonder, I think. It was sort of a compendium from the 11th century of dreams and dream types and dream symbols. Can you talk a little bit about, surrealism as a Western concept? You can talk more about like surrealism or the aesthetics of dreams as they exist in sort of Persian cultural history? Maybe a little about this book, Creatures of Wonder.
For the friends who haven't, actually those, what you're speaking about was what I wrote on the images. I do calligraphy over the photographs. And when I interviewed the American citizens, we collected their dreams. We basically asked them, you know, what was their latest dream. I was Simin in that sense. I shot all those photographs that you saw. And but then we refer to this ancient book of Iranian book that we found a copy in the Iranian library that is a loose interpretation of dreams or the surreal world that does not exist in sort of the real. And so what happened was I felt strongly that if these were Americans and they were telling their dreams, now I had to put in some of me as an Iranian, some of my history, some of my kind of traditions. And so it was very important to me that we did research in that way. And some of you can see the images. It's not just writing. There's also incredible illustrations. So the images ultimately became a union between an Iranian artist sort of infusing her own culture into the American faces. And that's why I chose.
I want to talk about the production design of the film and the location photography of the film because it's so essential to the work that you're both doing in the film. But I want to start by talking with Robin and Christopher about it because, Robin, your character, it's like I said, very powerful for the brevity of which you're on screen. But you seem to, when you walk out of that kitchen, you belong in that space. I'm very curious. I mean, that space feels like your character's. I'm curious, like, when you walk onto a set like that, where it's so clearly designed for a very particular vision, how do you draw on that, or how does that impact you as a performer?
Well, first of all, it's not a set.
Oh, okay.
It was a home in Albuquerque, and it was exactly as it was. Nothing was dressed. So I was just overwhelmed that they had found
I was
this
very surprised to hear
location.
that. It felt like a very, okay.
Yeah, it was insane. And every single thing in the house had to do with Jesus. So there I was. What I didn't have to work at it.
Did you get some time to walk around in that
Oh,
space?
yeah.
And
Yeah, there was one book on the shelf that was by an atheist. And I can't remember who it was. Might have been. But it was a remarkable house.
Did you get to meet the homeowners? Is that, okay.
Yep.
Was that part of your sort of character development or research, I'm wondering?
It was a fascinating experience.
Christopher, you're in a very striking living room when we first meet you, and you're not even in the living room. You're in your virtual headsets when we meet you. I'm curious. I mean, was that a home that was like that when you walked in? Or was
I don't believe it was
occasionally-
very much dressed up either. I just think it was the perfect, capture of the American, couple who's retired now, and he's into his golf and she's into Maryland. Right. So it was really quite amazing to see how well that all fitted together. It was one of the first scenes we did, and it just was a great joy to do it. But it had such depth at the same time, which I just loved. It's like, what? You're doing what to our dreams? For our protection? I mean, what in the hell? So it was just a fun to play that kind of, loose incredibility, but at the same time, know that that's a very affecting thing. And when he walks off as, you don't want my picture because I didn't tell you that I told my dreams, so, screw you. So it was kind of like that. It was very funny, and it has a lot of joy. It kicks off the movie quite nice, I think. So, but these homes, that the locations that they had were spectacular. I particularly like the exterior walk, where our leading lady walks by this, looks like a pyramid. It's sandstone.
Oh, sure.
And just, I'm like, where in the heck are we? It's just the whole thing was like poetically chosen, and I say kudos to her.
Yeah, the census building is interesting in that way because it feels very connected to the New Mexico architecture that you expect, but in the context of the film, the etchings on the side feel very, surreal or cryptic or enigmatic in a way that they're probably not intended. How did you find some of the locations in New Mexico? How long were you scouting for these places? Shoja?
Well, we had the location scout and we described what we were looking for, but we wanted real homes. We wanted, and we looked at a lot of them. And once you land at the right location, at the right environment, you know that this is what you want. And then we talked to people and they accepted it. We're literally the homes, we did nothing to them. It's really what
That's
they
really
do.
incredible to me. Yeah.
But I just want to say that there's a saying that a lot of Americans, for example, when they go to Iran, certain things become exotic to them that for us are very ordinary. I think in this film, it's clearly a film made by non-Americans because I think our look into the Southwest, New Mexico, the whole obsession with the road movies and the architecture of the motels, the diners, all of these are this iconic American architecture, and even the homes, even the choice of the people, the African American and the Native American. We just had this way of making a tapestry of America in the way that was, may I say, exotic to us. And I think for so long, for Iranians, we've been very obsessed with that region of the Southwest. And so I think with the cinematographer, we really went after it. And that it has this kind of accented point of view.
I'm going to ask one more question, and we'll turn it over to the audience. So be thinking of your questions. We'll have microphones on either side. When I call on you, wait for the microphone to come down, and then we'll go from there. Yeah, I think sometimes Americans, can feel even foreign to each other as different regions have their different cultures and their different aspects to it. So I wanted to ask, the one thing we haven't talked about is the colony. In the middle of this portrait of America, there was a colony of Iranian not expatriates. They're revolutionaries who have been there for 30 years and may not know. They're still living in the past. In the middle, where did the colony emerge from, and how did? It's such an enigma in the film, but it's also so central to Simin's journey and her character.
Well, I like to explain about where we shot, and I like to Shoja expand on what the meaning of it was. But ironically, this was a village that was built for the military, American military, to train the soldiers to invade Afghanistan. So this was in the border of New Mexico and Mexico. It was this very strange place where we stayed for a few days. And all those, like they built a bazaar, the mosques, the shops, the streets, and everything, adobe. And they would send the soldiers basically to do SWAT teams and basically attack the Talibans. But meanwhile, the animals are sleeping at night. It was kind of a mess. It's really scary. But I would like to ask Shoja to maybe explain what was the main idea about this colony.
The main idea? I have no idea.
The rough idea. You see how different we are. It's a rough
I don't
idea,
know.
Shoja.
It's a puzzle to me.
I know Shirin, I know why you do all the press now.
Try.
To be honest with you, I was one of those guys, and I know a lot of people, those revolutionaries of that time, that are literally like that. We have, I like to make a scene that at some point Iran would be liberated with all of these guys on wheelchairs attacking, I think they're around. It's not a joke. And some of them are pretty much organized and backed by US, which is really scary. It's called Mujahideen Khalq. And they're pretty scary cult. They have turned into a cult. And the US government is using them, keeping them as an option. So, it's also
more like
the
a
absurdity.
parody. I think it was more like a parody of so many Iranian people we know who have left Iran so many years ago, and they never go back to Iran, and they're now in their 70s, and they're still trying to overthrow the government, and they're meeting every week, like twice a week. But of course, this was absurd. They were still like training. So it was actually also a lot to do with Jean-Claude's vision of pushing everything beyond,
That's interesting. Let's turn it over to the audience. We'll ask some questions. So we're going to bring the mic over right over here on this side. Yeah, there you go.
Can you hear me? Great. Thank you so much, not just for this film. I was here last week and I watched Women Without Men and...
Can't hear you.
Sorry. Okay. Is it better now? So thank you so much, not just for this film, but also for Women Without Men and Looking for Kulthum. I was here last week and I watched both films. I'm from Egypt and I really admire your very, how can we say it, meta-cinematic approach to Kulthum and her work. I have a question about this film, actually. The protagonist, Simin, here is in some way, her facial expressions are quite numb most of time, with few exceptions. So what was behind this kind of a choice? This is the first part. Second part is about the location of the Persian music in this film. We have, if I remember correctly, we have 2 moments of Persian songs when she is in the car driving. Only in this moment we have Persian songs. So I know sometimes the choices are poetic and without a clear reason, but I feel curious to know more about this. Thank you.
I just want to say that with the character of Simin, I feel like there's an aspect of who the actress is, and part of it is myself. In the way, there's a sense of loneliness and always feeling like an outcast, like you don't belong among Americans, but also you don't maybe belong among Iranians. And so she lives inside of her head. She basically is disconnected from other people in a way that she really can't make a relationship. And I know many women who are like that, not just women, men as well, where you're not quite on the planet. You're always living inside, and you have a lot of secrets and a lot of pain, but it's never really manifested, and you cannot make small talks. And so for me, in conversation with Sheila and Shoja, became very important that this character embodies that feeling of a woman that is deeply isolated and suffers from disjointment between 2 cultures, and also the past and the present. That she's not able to let go of the past, but she's not also able to be in the present time, if that makes any sense. And so the only way she can cope with the world is to create this secret life in herself, which I think as artists we do that. We're very awkward in the social world, but I think I'm the happiest when I'm just working, because I'm really very honest and I'm very truthful. So I am, in that sense, I think she's very naked, and about the music, and I don't mean to dominate, but for me it was really important that there would be Persian music in this film, because it represented an aspect of this woman's dilemma and emotional connection to Iran. And Sheila Van, the main actress, still listens to all this music from Iran from the 70s and 60s. It's incredible how connected we are to this culture. And yet, with Michael's music, because Persian music is so melancholic and so sad for many of us because it's so nostalgic. But I like the score of the film because it's so Americano. But the very end, it's so sad at the same time. And if the story was so universal about this shared pain between all of us, I felt the music and traveling between Persian music and a music that came at the end as a score or throughout, to me they were equally emotional. And that's something that, I look out for in the films. Sorry.
Let's ask right here in the. Yeah, you right there. Yeah, let's bring a mic down to the.
First of all, Shirin, I want to say I'm a huge fan of your work, and this film was amazing, and the team is amazing. There's a scene, there's a scene where her father's poster is torn down, and it kind of made me think about how Iranians living in the United States, how our actions in the United States can affect the people in Iran, their legacy, our family that we still have in Iran. And I was just wondering, as an Iranian filmmaker and artist outside of Iran, working outside of Iran, is this something you often deal with and think about? And is this a decision, or kind of, was this a idea you wanted to represent in your film?
You mean the missing image of the father at some point? Yeah. For me, the colony, and I really like for Shoja to explain more, it was Simin's nightmare. And I think her father being such an obsession, and the fact that that his face was there and then it was missing, and this whole conspiracy of that they were playing with her, it was really very important. I also felt that the images at the very end of the film, where she puts together the images of her family next to the American people, is a very significant move from that moment where she's not able to disconnect from her father. I don't know, I think this was an idea that we had, that actually a lot of the images in that room were my family and Shoja's family's pictures. That some of them were very surprised to see. I think pictures of family when you're living in exile, it's very painful, because, you know, they really sort of a reminder of this feeling of disconnect. And that's all. Do you want to add to her question?
I think it's the lack, right? I mean, it's that negative space there. I always thought of it as the concept of, like, if one picture is removed from many, it would represent the lack. And emotionally, perhaps, that's what we could communicate, you know, as what it is really, what her experience is, or what our experience is.
Let me go on this side. Any on this side? Let's go in the back, right, way in the back here on this side.
Thank you. Just wanted to congratulate all of you for this beautiful masterpiece, and also the two films that we watched last week. Truly significant, and I have everything still stuck in my head since last week, so congratulations for that. What really stood out to me, because I myself left Iran when I was 6.5, and I grew up in Germany dealing with a lot of racism, and then I came here and it was more welcoming, but you still stand out as a foreigner sometimes. And what was really remarkable about the character of Sheila was that she worked for the census, and she went to people's homes and they trusted her for some reason. Although she was a foreigner, people that were white or native trusted her with all these answers and with all their dreams. So if you can elaborate more on that, on how you chose a Middle Eastern character that had Iranian background to be trusted so much, that was really, really nice to watch. And also, my mom wanted to know how you went about the casting, how you found each actor to represent the character that you had envisioned.
They're all brilliant.
Yeah.
Especially is resonate with the situation now, because you choose such a powerful woman.
So, thank you.
To answer your first question, I've lived in the United States longer than Iran. I've been here for many, many years. And I have also lived outside of New York City, where I live. We have homes upstate. And I've always been very struck by the way in which no matter how many years you've been in this country, you pretty much remain an outsider. And the reception of the people to you, especially when you travel outside of the main cities, are sometimes very conflicting. There are times that I felt extremely welcome, and really people who showed a lot of curiosity about who we are as Iranians, kind of exotic, and very kind. And then there are people who don't open up, who are very hesitant about welcoming you, especially after September 11th. There was a huge sense of antagonism. I feel this is, if I had to compare Europe with America, I've always felt a lot more racism in Europe, almost immediately across the board. But in America, I felt largely as a country that is very loving, it's very kind, that is not really racist in majority, but nevertheless, there's a lot of ignorance about, the way they categorize people from, for example, from the Middle East, and simplify it. And so I have had instances where I felt that people felt really awkward toward me, or treated me in a way that I felt very uncomfortable. But I've also been extremely moved by majority of Americans that have been so welcoming to us and kind and compassionate. And the reality is that probably I will live here the rest of my life. I will never live in a country that I look like everyone else and I speak the same language. I will always be an outsider and a foreigner, whether it's in Europe or Mexico or America. And that's the reality we have to live with. And there are always going to be people who accept you and people who alienate you. And I think it's this nature of human beings. But in general, in this film, we really carefully thought about the demographics and and how she may not be invited and her treatment. If you remember the house that Jackie lives, these few older men were extremely racist with their remarks. Yeah. Because that's the information they have, that all Iranians are Arabs. And we tried to put that in, but then there were other instances that they were just totally welcoming. So, yeah.
I want to follow up on that if you don't mind, because this project, the first one we talked about, it's the first one where you're looking at America and sort of examining what America is. As my understanding it, this project began during a moment in American history when I think a lot of us were wondering what is happening here and what is going on. And I'm curious how you felt. Was there anything particular about that moment, let's just call it post-2016, that made you really want to examine more closely this country that you've been living in? Did you see the kinds of experiences that you're talking about getting worse? Were you feeling, was this a way of like processing maybe that changed towards, a sort of step backwards? I'm curious.
Well, I can tell you one thing, that I always felt that, as an Iranian, that, especially after Trump, that things were just going haywire. And then when I went to New Mexico and started to photographing a lot of people making the film and the videos, I started for the first time, and so I was always closer to Iranians and not so much with Americans, etc. When I went to New Mexico and we started to work on this film, I spent more time with other minorities, including Native Americans, African Americans, Hispanic. And something strange happened for me that had never happened before, where I, for the first time, really connected with other minorities in America. And it felt incredible, because I thought I only relate to Iranian people because they know how I feel and our situations are so common. But really what was an eye-opener for me in Land of Dreams was how I connected and identified with the challenges of other minority groups and their stories and their anxieties and their fears and concerns about the future of America was very similar that of ours. And that was a revelation. And I from then on, my whole point of view has changed in a way that I don't only connect to Iranians, I connect to many other parties.
Time for a couple more questions. Let's go right down here in front. Let's wait for the mic.
You. Shirin Jan, I love the movie and congratulate you and Shoja for the movie. Very beautiful one. I have two questions. The first one is the singing bird doesn't fly at night unless he's lost the home. That's you. I know that. But for the code, that the cracking the code for the letter in the colony, what was the meaning of that? I missed that one.
I let Shoja answer.
The code that they were trying to crack, it was written in Abjad, but it was gibberish, you know. It's just like it was. I mean, the scene is absurd, right? I mean, it's the whole the scene is supposed to be a play on absurdity. So you have a contrast with highly, like, kind of a corporate America that has taken over the government, and then the surveillance is all the way to taking your dreams, you know, and they're not interested in your consciousness any longer, but also your subconscious. And it's contrasted with this image of backwardness, of that their code is still written in a language that belongs to Middle Ages. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, but I don't know if that makes any sense, really. But
We have time for one more question. Let's go way over here on the side here. Bring the mic down.
Thank you so much. First of all, I just wanted to say how much I appreciate you as an artist, as an Iranian artist, because I was in Green Movement back then, and seeing and hearing that you were doing hunger strike and supporting the Green Movement meant a lot to all Iranians actually back then, and all the students in the school in undergrad that we were studying. So I just wanted to say how much I appreciate that. After all these years, and I'm nervous seeing you also now. Also, in the film, I just wanted to see if you can elaborate a little bit about a meaning between story and dreams, because Simin in the movie mentioned that if you forget the dream, then it becomes a story, and I just wanted to see how you can elaborate a little bit about that.
First of all, thank you for your kind words. I mean, I think what happens for most of us when we wake up and we think about a dream, immediately vanishes. I mean, it happens to me almost every day. I dream a lot. And then you actually, when you try to explain it to someone else, you turn it into a story. You give it a beginning, middle, and the end. But in reality, it's impossible to have it be like that. So I think a lot of this also came from Jean-Claude, who was very, very interested in dreams. But that's what it is that dreams vanish so quickly, and then when you try to describe it, it becomes a story. We turn it into a story. I just want to say one thing. As someone asked about the casting, and I forgot to say that is very important to us in this film, the casting part, which we did during the pandemic. It was incredibly difficult. But the idea was that we would have very iconic American actors taking big parts in, because there were 6 short stories, and each story was a household, and it had its own significant characters, but they were dominated by particular actors. And for us, that was a really interesting methodology, and we were very lucky that they agreed to work with small directors like us, and so Matt Dillon and William Mosley seemed like a perfect candidates for their role, and they both agreed. But for me, Sheila, going through these different houses, encountering these incredible characters and actors, was really a strong idea, and that's what we were aiming at.
Well, like I said earlier, it really is an iconic American cast by an iconic visual artist. And I just want to say it was a huge honor to have so much talent up on here on stage. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to come out. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming, everybody.